Well, howdy, Rock and Roll Nation, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Talkin, Chute. Today on the show, we have none other than Miss Shaley Ham, also known as West Desperado. Shaley is a social media trailblazer connecting with hundreds of thousands of followers across a multitude of platforms, setting and curating fashion trends throughout the Western industry. Above all that, she's a wonderful human being, and I loved our conversation. So without any further ado, this is Talkin, Chute.
All right, welcome back. Finally back in Fort Worth, Texas, in the offices of Rock and Roll Denim and Panhandle. We have Miss Shaley Ham, West Desperado. How's it been going?
It's been going so good. I am pretty sure, other than Dallas Market, this is my first time back since we talked last.
Man.
And so it's great to be back in Texas. I feel like last year I was spoiled and I got to come to Texas like every month, it felt like. And I mean, I've been lacking this year a little bit, so I got to pick it up.
You like it down here, don't you?
I do. And, you know, if I could move down here, I would. Not saying I can't, but my husband just is too much of a mountain man to want to abandon that.
Oh, that's totally understandable. I've got an uncle that's the exact same way. He loves it here. He loves the lakes, but he hates the heat. He hates the summer, so he's not about to deal with that anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, man, there's been a lot going on since the last time I talked to you.
Yeah, we had NFR, we've had Dallas Market, and I've just been like a world traveler lately, and so lots of fun stories to tell.
So the first one I want to get into is NFR. We both kind of partnered with Virgin this year. Rock and Roll does our little thing, and then you kind of made a little deal with them. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that was amazing. I know Rock and Roll Denim kind of made that connection for me, so super grateful for that. But I got to go and stay at the Virgin. I'm usually in an Airbnb, so it was nice to actually be kind of more centralized and in the action, I guess you could say, during NFR. And I got to eat at their really amazing restaurants, which, I mean, I can go all day about that. The food was just so amazing there, and I really loved having the watch party there. And then if I wanted to go to a concert after, we could go upstairs and like back to the room and check in before we like went out for the night afterwards too. So that was just like super fun, and I'll definitely be back to the Virgin.
I think that's my favorite thing about that location is that it's so centrally located. You can see Thomas and Mack from the front door.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a walk, but if you wanted to, you could probably make that happen. But also there is, like you said, they have a huge concert venue, and I think during the NFR, they kind of specifically look to book country artists there.
Yeah.
So you get a new country band every single night. I think they even had some in that same room that we were doing the watch party after, and then they would have like Ryan Bingham or somebody giant on the other side. But yeah, it's so great. They're like you said, the restaurants. Which one was your favorite?
We really liked Olives.
Olives, good place.
The beef carpaccio. I've never had beef carpaccio before, and my friends were with us, and they were like, let's get that. And it was like, I don't think I've ever ate something so delicious. And I've tried beef carpaccio again, and it won't top that.
One the same?
Yeah.
I hate when you get your expectations as somebody makes it perfect, and you try it somewhere else, and it's just not so great. But I think my favorite, I would have to say it was the pizza place, but that's only because most of the times I only have 3.5 minutes to eat something.
Yeah.
So it's so quick.
Just go.
Yeah, you roll in, grab it, roll out, and then back onto your job. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Virgin's great. We've had our partnership there for 2 years. I think we're going to go back next year, obviously. But yeah, we've really enjoyed our time there. Every time we throw our annual influencer party or social media party, it's packed. It's packed every single time.
So packed.
So
and always the best time.
It's
People
a good time.
talk about it for months following.
Oh, that's the whole point. That's what I was hoping for. So I love that. How was this year's NFR different for you than previous year's NFR?
This year, I really set some good boundaries for myself. I think it was the first year that I actually said no to more opportunities than I said yes to, which as an influencer, that's like kind of scary, especially NFR is obviously like for the Western side of things, the biggest time of the year. So saying no to opportunities with brands or just events, it was kind of liberating because I feel like myself, I've gotten to a point where I've like kind of owned my power, I guess. Like,
I love that.
Not to be like cliche, but like that's really what it felt like. And I've always just gone 1,000 miles an hour for the 10 days straight. And honestly, it's more than 10 days because you have I get there early and you do some shoots beforehand. And then you're just like sick as a dog trying to go home that final Sunday. And so setting the boundaries for myself, I was able to like sleep in some days. I had maybe like 1 or 2 big obligations to take care of during the day, but then I actually got to shop around, which is also something I never really had time to do before. And so I just like can't preach that enough, that if some other influencers are listening, like it's okay to say no to some things, like turn down some parties or turn down some like partnership things if you know that like you're going to save yourself in the long run, because it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like 10 days is going like full blast, like dusk till dawn.
I think I got really lucky in the last few years that I was there. Like everybody hears about the Vegas crud. And I mean, I think maybe the first year I got sick when I got home, like right off the plane. But I never got sick while I was out there until this year. And I think for some reason, for so many other people, it was the exact same way. Like people were dropping in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
And they'd be out for a day. Then you see them back. I was like, man, I don't know what that was. But it happened to me twice.
I remember seeing you at the watch party one night and you're like, yeah, I've just been down for the count for the last like 24 hours.
Generally, I can kind of push through a little bit, especially like we did podcasts every day. So that was the time where I had to like take all the meds, take all the caffeine, be right here mentally and not feel any pain. Luckily, they were mini podcasts, so I didn't really have to like stay on the air and smiley for like 45 minutes. But it was a struggle. But the last one was the worst part. And I really do attribute it to, like you said, not having to fill your schedule so much. But of course, when I'm out there, I'm working for the company. Yeah. But I also want to have fun. I want to go see my friends that I haven't seen in a year or so and mingle with them. But you have to take that very lightly and be very careful because you will burn out super quick.
Yeah. We were supposed to go see Co Wetzel, who played at the Virgin. And I think it was on like a Wednesday night. And something happened. Our tickets kind of didn't work out. And I was like, this is a blessing in disguise, because I know Co Wetzel was going to be insane. And like Co Wetzel crowd, it just would have gotten like out of hand fast, I'm sure. And we ate dinner and we watched the rodeo, and then we went up to bed, and I was like, this feels so nice to be like in my sweatpants at 9:00 at night and just not having to like try to put on like my party pants right now, because you really are. I mean, like, even if you're not drinking every single night, like you are out doing things until like midnight easily.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us, especially on the media side, I remember I've told this timeline so many times. It's like you wake up at 7:00 so we can hit the 7:30 company meeting, and then you have maybe 2 hours to edit whatever you did the day before, get that ready to schedule to be posted, what have you. Then you're at the convention center. I'm shooting one podcast, but we're also manning autograph signings as a marketing team, making sure the line's not crazy, and out into the aisleway where Las Vegas or Cowboy Christmas will come by and yell at you for being in the way. So we would do that, and then back to the hotel, maybe an hour and a half, a little bit more editing, try to take a power nap for 75 seconds or as much as you can. And then it's get ready for the rodeo, head to the rodeo, immediately leave that, go to the Gold Buckle. By the time you know it, it's 11:45 when you get back home.
For me, this was my second year having an assistant with me. And that helps tremendously. Like, I'll probably always have at least someone with me. I've had my sister and like my husband in the past have like been there to help me, but having someone whose like sole purpose is like, okay, what do you need? How can I help you? Is definitely like the most beneficial thing that I can have. But I've realized now, as someone who needs to be like present in person and online the entire time, is that like my next step is to have like someone I can outsource my content to. Like, I can film all these things and just get it like good enough and then send it to them, and they can like edit it down and actually like post it for me. Because that's where I was sacrificing a lot of my like downtime. Like, we'd go back to the room, I'd have an hour or so to get ready for like the next thing, but I'd have to sit there and just like make sure I posted, like see what other like contracts I have in place. Like, did I post the right thing today, and am I ready to post the next thing for later? And so that's something that I've realized I need, which is also kind of cool that I've gotten to the point where I can have the capabilities to do that. But I just want to be as present in person while still getting my rest. And so constantly being on my phone, I've figured out is something I don't enjoy doing.
Right. And that's, like you said, with the marathon that is NFR, your brain, I only have, I would say, an 8 terabyte hard drive every single day, and it is running at 7.95 terabytes all the time. So I don't have too much to be floating around. So I think the less mental tax you can take off yourself out there, especially in that fast-paced environment, the better. And probably for you, you'd feel better about the content that you're putting out in the first place. Yeah,
exactly. Even down to captions, I got to the point, I'm like, my mind is blank on like what I can say right now. So I just be like, yeehaw, or, like, what kind of filler can I throw in here? So that's what I'm hoping to continue into this coming NFR, which I feel like is going to sneak up on us faster than I would like to say it will.
It always does.
It always does.
It always does. And now that it's April.
I can't believe that. I feel like I haven't done anything this year. But I mean, really, I've done a lot.
You've
but
done a lot. Yeah. So you enjoyed NFR this year.
NFR was amazing.
So what was your next adventure after that? You've been some places since
I have been, yeah, like I said, I've been a little traveler. So after that, first part of January, went to WISA for the Western Apparel Market at Dallas Market Center. I've been working with Dallas Market Center for, give or take, the last like 3 to 4 years. And so I love that partnership that I built with them. It gives me great FaceTime with brands. And I love, obviously, I come hang out with you guys in the rock and roll showroom for a while. I've hopefully gotten everyone on the Pendleton or whiskey margaritas.
Oh, I got to give everybody the recipe for that later. But yes, continue.
And when I say Dallas Market Center, they started having me do some of the intros for the fashion show. So just kind of even expanding like my skill set and what I do, because this really is become more than just posting photos and videos online. You know, I've built a brand for myself, and expanding into some of these like public speaking spheres, or just, you know, trying out new avenues, I guess, with my business has been really exciting.
Do you feel like, so you came from an accounting, you were a tax accountant, professional, and you did that for several years. You had a certain season where you're working with all those numbers, but realistically that was what your focus was as far as income. Do you feel like having all that, like, I guess, or just being used to keeping all of that data like in one general area, being very, very organized with everything that you have to do, kind of helps you out with what you're doing now?
Oh, for sure. If I didn't have that discipline of like a business background, I would be scattered. And I still catch myself now that I quit that job. I guess it was 11 months ago. We're coming up on the year anniversary for that. I'll catch myself every once in a while, kind of lose track of where I'm at. And I'm like, okay, how did I keep a full-time job and this business running so smoothly for so long? And I just have to go back to like that discipline of like keeping that schedule for myself and kind of like more of a routine and tracking those kinds of numbers.
Yeah. You were saying earlier today that this is the first tax season that you haven't actually been in the trenches, so to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still getting a lot of people reaching out about tax questions, and I try to avoid them when I can, especially I'm not up to date on current like tax laws, I guess you could say, but it's been so much fun. Like I said, I went to Dallas Market, and then it was a week later, my husband and I took our honeymoon. We got married last year, but we waited for winter to have our honeymoon. We went to Mexico for 8 days. And then in February, we went to Arizona for a week. And then we also just got back from New Zealand for 2.5 weeks. And I would have not been, even though I worked remotely, I would have not been able to do any of that stuff if I was still working for an accounting firm. And the nice part is now is when I travel, I can make some of my work fit into that schedule, so I can shoot at these like new locations, especially we were in the middle of winter, and so I'm not going to be shooting outside in like 3 feet of snow.
Sure.
Ideally, I don't like to do that. So like going to some of these like warmer destinations were nice to kind of slip in some work where I could.
Yeah, and that's great. You get to go into some place that a lot of people aren't going to see on their feed every day, or especially like somebody in this industry being in New Zealand. I know there's a big cowboy population down there too, but you know, somebody that they're used to from the United States being in a different country, that's really cool. That's a cool thing to have.
And it was awesome because so we went to New Zealand. Our friend got married, and we know him because he would come over, and he was a bareback and a saddle bronc rider, and so he'd hit the rodeo circuit in the summers over here. And then last summer when he was here, he proposed to his girlfriend, and so we knew that wedding was coming up. But it was actually the day after we got into the country was the New Zealand National Finals Rodeo. It's a one-day event, and let me tell you how different it's. You bring your own chair.
No
There's like
way.
a grassy knoll, just a little hilltop, and people. It was like kind of rainy that day, so people had like the pop-up tents, and there's like the beer garden up in the corner. But I mean, yeah, you brought your own chair, and they did like the 2 different rounds, and it was like an aggregate for the winners with like the year end, and it was definitely a different experience. It was like a backyard rodeo, but that was their national finals rodeo.
That's so crazy. That's something I'd love to see one day.
Yeah.
I told you earlier how bad I wanted to go to New Zealand just for my own selfish Lord of the Rings purposes. But yeah, I fell in love with rodeo. You know, I've been being in this position for 3 years now, 4 years almost. It's been something that's just, everything's just very constant. It's been the same sport for the last 100 years. And now you have more pyro, you have more lights, you have more music, you have all that, and the spectacle's huge, especially in the United States. But yeah, I think that's something in another country I'd love to see.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. Obviously, I don't rodeo myself, but just like the lifestyle, I kind of grew up traveling to the rodeos, and I don't like going to rodeos like not knowing someone competing almost, because it's like you don't have that same like feeling and experience. And my pastime is literally going to watch rodeos. Like that might sound, I guess, not weird. People in the industry like probably love it just as much, but there's something about rodeo. There's something about this industry, and it will always have a piece of my heart.
I do it all the time. Sometimes it'll just be something small down at Cowtown in the stockyards, and I'll just roll in there with my camera and I'll shoot bucking horses just to get practice, to try something else. That way, if I am doing an event for Rock and Roll Dinner, I'm like, I tried that there. Maybe I can implement that here. So, yeah, I love it. But it's the smells, it's the lights, it's the crowd, it's the way that the same people love it, and the same people are showing up every year, or even more so. Yeah. Like you think about the NFR, I think I heard a statistic, and this could be completely wrong, but just through Cowboy Christmas alone, they say they move 500,000 people through there in that 10 days.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I think I heard a similar statistic with those numbers. Yeah.
But just that amount of people in one city that's just buried in the middle of the desert. I mean, Vegas is a big town, but it's not a huge town. Yeah. It's not like a sprawling metropolis like DFW. Yeah. Everything's pretty confined, and then 3 hours that way you have LA. Yeah. So it's just insane the amount of people that they bring in there every single December. Yeah. So, but I'm looking forward to the next one. I think next year is going to be even bigger.
I think so too.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of traveling, but the one thing that I really wanted to ask you about is me having a bunch of friends that kind of do the same thing that I do, that are creators, that are artists, I'd like to say. I think the number one dream and goal for them, or what they're really trying to do, is like, I don't want to work for anybody. I want to be my own boss and work for myself. And that's a transition that you made pretty recently that we've already explained. But I feel like that takes just an immense amount of courage. Yeah. Was it something that kind of made you nervous at first?
It definitely did. And people asked me for forever, like, what point do you think you're going to quit? Like, is there a certain income level you're waiting for? And I mean, if I really wanted to, I probably could have quit years before I actually did, because I started content creating and accounting the same year, 2016. So those have always been just something I've been doing both at the same time. And I really liked doing accounting, believe it or not. Like there was some like interest and fun and passion in that for me. Like that's why I stuck with it for so long. But when it finally came time to like put in my notice, like I was shaking. I felt like I was like letting them down. I'm an Enneagram 3, so quitting is not necessarily something that I enjoy doing. But they were very supportive. And what I've kind of felt was interesting, that I kind of just put the pieces together for this very recently, was this last year. So the rest of 2022, after I quit my job, I felt like I was just going to like get into this like great routine and like just be my own boss, and everything was going to go smooth. And it was like, I could not figure out a rhythm for myself. And I'm still kind of struggling with it. And it's because I've like had this corporate burnout. Like I overworked myself so long in that position that I started to resent it towards the end. Like probably the last year that I worked for that firm, I started to resent this job. Like I just hated logging on. It was taking me longer to get things done. And I was just like at this like severe burnout phase. And I think that's kind of what has put my rhythm in a funk for the rest of 2022, was because I needed to kind of like get past that. Like I couldn't think of anything creative like for my business, and like I wasn't being consistent, but I think I just needed that time to like really refresh. And I have a business coach, and same thing after NFR, like going that hard I was there for 14 days this year. I usually was like, okay, I'll take the rest of December off, get through the holidays, and then I'll like hit the ground running January. And it was like mid-January, I had a meeting with her, and I'm like, I just can't get back to it. I'm like, I have so many ideas flowing, but there's something holding me back. There's something that's like not motivating me right now. And I think I still just like, I was just recovering from corporate burnout, and then I put myself through NFR. And so I had like content creation, influencer, social media burnout. Sure. And so I think it's important, especially if you're going to be your own boss, to just like recognize those seasons that you're going through. Like not every season has to be a growth season. That's a direct quote from my business coach, Paige Lawrence, who's married to Richmond Champion. So I'll credit her on that, because that was an epiphany I had with her on a call that we had. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like sometimes you do just have to like maintain so that you can build yourself back up for like actually hitting the growth season like productively. Of
course. I've always felt like as a creator that it doesn't matter to me. Sometimes I could be as motivated as I ever have been, but those ideas just aren't coming. It's just, you end up seeing yourself in this pattern of you're doing the same things over and over again because it's comfortable, because you know it looks good, because you know how to do it and you can do it quickly. But you know, a lot of times it'll just be the most random thing in the world. It could be a movie that I saw that I really wanted to see by one of my favorite directors. I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that, but I could probably do something similar, or at least in the same realm. But for me, it's just, I'm never really sure when that inspiration hits. But like you said, I think it's important to feel comfortable in those times where it's not necessarily hitting. It doesn't mean that you're not good. It doesn't mean that you're not, you know, even getting better at what you do in the long run. But, you know, sometimes just as an artist, the inspiration doesn't hit you, but when it does, that's the catalyst for the next thing.
Exactly. And I also think, I mean, Instagram, social media, like has been giving us like whiplash with like updates and changes and what you should be doing, what like isn't happening right now. Like, I also think that has just been like a headache to try to keep up with. And the way people are using social media is different than it was like 3 years ago. And so it's just, that can be tough in itself when your sole business is focused on social media.
Sure.
Yeah.
Recently, I've kind of switched. I was really involved in the, I would say more so Instagram, Facebook, and a little bit on TikTok side of things for us for a while. And then I kind of shifted my focus over to YouTube. And YouTube is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Completely. And it's not as gratifying as Instagram could be, especially since we don't have as much of a followership on our YouTube as we do on our Instagram, which I hope you guys will fix that as soon as this podcast is over. But it's one of those things that you don't really know exactly what is going to be great. I can work on something for 2 days and, you know, master the music and master the audio, and the visuals are perfect, and it's a 4-minute piece that I put my heart and soul into. I get 75 views. But then I'll put up a reel. They call them shorts at YouTube, but I can put on something like that over there. 1,500 views in the first hour.
Crazy.
It took 30 seconds to throw together. So I'm like, well, why don't I just do like 5 of those a day and then not worry about the bigger pieces until somebody really wants to see one of the bigger pieces? Yeah. Social media is just, it's wild. It's wild these days.
Yeah. I'm definitely trying to look into different ways to expand my revenue stream so I'm not solely so focused on social media constantly. But that even takes like some structure and discipline and execution to make all those things happen. YouTube was one of those where for the last 3 months, I was like, I think I'm going to start dabbling into it. And I've kind of realized that maybe that's not my focus right now. Not saying it won't be in the future, but it's a different beast over there.
Yeah. This is a guy that, like, I obviously like to film the podcast just because I think video is king. And it also gives us something for the YouTube page as well.
Yeah.
But I looked at some of the people that I like watching their podcast on YouTube, and then I kind of researched, okay, well, how many subscribers does it take to get one of those really cool plaques that YouTube sends out? And it's like 100,000. I'm like, oh. Okay. Well, we got a while to go, but doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes to like thinking of other things that you might do to expand your own metaverse, I guess you could say. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast yourself?
I have thought of that when I was dabbling with the YouTube. I'm like, maybe a podcast is like more up the avenue of what I want to do. So I'm not ruling it out, but again, it's really not in my main focus right now. I really want to start diving, or I've already started, I guess, at this point, diving into more educational content, because I do think that doing this job, this career over the last 7 years, like especially starting where it wasn't a job, it wasn't even a thing, to now like what it's become. So getting into the educational side, I have a wealth of knowledge to share with that. And so I have a few different ideas that hopefully will work out in the long run, but they're definitely like new. I'm trying something very new, which can be really scary, but hopefully it pays off.
Sure, yeah. I think anything that you can do, and you've always been really creative with the things that you do. Like your post, I would say, in my opinion, are completely different than anything that I've seen in this industry as far as showing your clothing, how you do it, but you keep it fresh all the time. Like it's never the same thing twice. Even if it is maybe the same like sort of unboxing, you find a different way to do that every time. And I really think that that's one of your superpowers as far as how popular you've become. Because people get so excited to see what's the next thing that Shaley's going to do.
Yeah, thank you. The other night I was scrolling back because I kind of felt down with something I posted wasn't performing well, and I was scrolling back to like my NFR and my pre-NFR content, and even some of those flopped, and I'm looking back, I'm like, I don't know, not to like toot my own horn, but like I feel like I'm onto something. Like watching these back, like it's inspiring me. So at least, even though I'm not seeing it in the meantime because I might get too wrapped up in the numbers behind it, like if I'm getting inspired months later by something that I created, I'm hoping that what I'm putting out there is inspiring other people, whether it's for styling purposes, whether it's for social media purposes, or just whatever it might be.
Yeah, when we were talking about you coming in, we knew that it was going to be sometime this month, but when we were talking about, okay, well, these are the things we want to do with Shaley while we're here. Let's do a media plan and figure it out. We always love doing shoots with you. The last time that you were here, we did that small shoot in the stockyards. I think it was it right before or right after NFR?
It was right before.
Right before NFR. And I remember we shot for maybe half a day in maybe 2 or 3 different locations, but all those videos worked out so well. All those photos worked out so well. And we did it in a half a day with almost zero planning. I was like, well, that's just Shaley.
Yeah.
That's just Shaley. She's just so good at what she does. So like you can go out there, press go on the camera, and she knows. You don't have to coach her. She knows what she's doing. And I think that your experience with trying different things, but also looking back on what you've done in the past probably really elevates that.
Yeah, and I also want to credit that too. When I first started, I guess maybe 2 years into my influencing creation journey, I started working with professional photographers because I was at the point I'm like, okay, I want to kind of up my content game. I know nothing about photography, but I know some really good photographers in my area. And like, I just want to say sorry to any photographer I worked with in 2018 because I would show up to a shoot with like, they're like, okay, how many outfits do you have? I'm like, I have 10 and we have an hour and a half to shoot them. And it's like, I would just like rapid fire. Like it was kind of a hot mess, but that like, I didn't really know what I was doing with my business, especially like I had to make enough money to pay the photographers and I like realistically wasn't charging enough for what I was doing. So I had to compensate by like including all this different stuff. I didn't really have a plan. Like we'd meet at a location and I'm like, okay, we're just going to go. One time even I borrowed Nick's rodeo van. He had like this ghetto old school rodeo van. I loaded it with all my clothes and we met at the Cheney rodeo grounds, my hometown rodeo grounds. And this was in the middle of spring and like the people came and unlocked the rodeo grounds for us so we could use it. I'm mobbing this rodeo van like through the back where they usually park the trailers. And all of a sudden I go, whoa. And I just get stuck in the mud. And like, and there's no pulling this thing doesn't have 4-wheel drive. Like there's no getting this out. So I'm like trying to make a little path that I can at least get from the van to like dry ground and like hauling all of my clothes. Like it was freezing, but I had a shoot to do. And this is the day I booked it. And I'm like hauling all these clothes, like, and hanging them up on like the arena fence. And like, we got the work done. And luckily the photographer's husband was with her. And so he worked, I don't know, he was a good country guy, so he went and like got his friends and they got some tow straps and pulled my van out like while we were shooting. And it's like just thinking back to all those shoots were just chaos, like pure chaos. And I think that if I didn't go through that, like I probably would be like more stressed out on shoots today. But like since I've put myself through like the worst.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know that, like, nothing can really go so wrong that it's going to ruin that kind of work.
Right. And from the camera's perspective of that, like the photographer, I cannot tell you how many times I've been out to a shoot. And I mean, it's been a while that it was this bad.
Yeah.
But I've been out to a shoot and forgotten an SD card. Been out to a shoot and surprisingly, somehow all your batteries are dead.
Yeah.
And then you have to think, or like maybe you have one battery, so you have to have one charging while you're shooting with the other one and then flip them back and forth and just play that little dance all day long. Or weather. Sometimes it starts raining and your cameras aren't weatherproof. So You got to worry about that. Fashion a little plastic bag around the lens or whatever you can do. So I can very much relate to that. I think all the failures that I had when I was first in college and then, doing other jobs before I came here, that really, really translated into like, well, first of all, I have a second and third contingency for everything. Like I try to set myself up to where I can't fail, but inevitably something is going to go wrong. You're going to forget something. Something's going to go wrong. But it's about being mindful of that and having a second plan in the back of your head just in case you do need to, throw an alternate.
Exactly. But it definitely does make it easier for me now, like showing up and you guys were kind of like, okay, here's where we're going to go. We have so many looks and I'm just like, yeah, like, let's go. Like I've trained myself to just like be ready to go at like a moment's notice, luckily, with those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, those are such fun shoes. But yeah, that shoot did so well. And we were talking about, well, where do you want to take her this time? We go, so we're doing some, I think we're going to do holiday. Let's do something outdoors. Let's do something. I was like, oh, perfect. Eagle Mountain Lake. I know exactly where we should go. Everything's in one little area. Like the little base camp changing station that we would have would be on one side, and then 45 yards away is everything else. So we can keep it tight, keep it concise, like know exactly where we're going to shoot, how many outfits we're going to have lunch, go to the next location, knock out a couple more outfits, and that's a day. Yeah. So I think you train yourself, like you said, I think you train yourself in your head to kind of keep this schedule just always in your head of what exactly that you're going to do. That way it kind of doesn't, if there is a surprise thrown in there, you're a little bit more prepared for that.
Yeah. And I would say that's a big thing to kind of note, like other people that are doing influencing or modeling or content creation is just be like ready to go with the flow. I feel like the times I've been let down of when I've set too many expectations for myself. Or like what I expect things to be like to a T. And you just can't do that, especially when you're working with a team. Because even if you're on your A game, someone else might not be. And so you kind of have to just like compensate in order to like get the best work done.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I always have a general idea of what I want, what story I'm trying to tell. But generally, I would say 9 times out of 10, I won't give myself the expectation of like seeing exactly what I'm going to put together from start to finish. Because I mean, inevitably, it's just not going to work out that way. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be good. It could end up even being better.
Yeah.
You just, like you said, you have to go with the flow, trust yourself, trust the people that are around you. If there is a problem, maybe call it out. But other than that, like, just trust yourself. And you've been doing this for so long. You've done this 1,000 times before. Like, it's probably going to turn out okay. Just trust yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're not doing influencing and when you're not on the internet all day or on Instagram all day or like teaching the masses how you do you, what does Shaley like to do?
I love to ride my horse. Last year I bought a horse all for myself. I've been riding him my whole life, but I found one and it just, God's timing kind of worked out and I got this cute little Palomino. And I actually put my first ride on her of 2023 the other day, and I wasn't really sure what to expect because she's pretty green, but it went super well, and I've learned a lot by having a more green horse. Like just my horsemanship skills have really grown from that. So I really love to go riding. I also have a herd of goats now.
I love those goats.
Nick surprised me and brought a goat home one day last year, and I don't think he realized what he was getting himself into because the one turned to 2, and then the 2 by fatal accident turned to 1.
Oh no.
And I was like, well, like she needs a friend. And so 1 turned to 2, and then 2 has now turned to 3.
So you're 3, and they're mini goats, right?
One of them is a Nigerian dwarf, and then 2 of them are boar crosses, so they're like the white ones with the brown heads.
Oh, okay.
They're pretty like medium sized, and I mean they're like dogs. Like we go on walks, we run and play, like that's so much fun. So ultimately I love being outdoors with animals. I guess is long story short. And I do love just styling. Like that really is a passion of mine. Is I don't want to say shopping, like that's so cliche, but I actually love just like finding new funky pieces and like putting outfits together, whether it's for myself or for like a family member or a friend. I definitely style my mom and help my sister, and I'll have some of my friends come over and kind of like shop my closet when they have events coming up. So that's always fun to kind of lend that knowledge, you could say, to other people. And just like anything creative, really. I've started to get into photography a little bit, kind of more for like my own sake, but it's been fun to be able to learn that skill. And I feel like that's even something like down the road, if I wanted to offer photography, I feel pretty confident in my skills that I could do something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it was last time you told me that you just got a camera, right?
Yeah, well, I bought it in 2020, but I didn't touch it for the first like 6 to 8 months that I have it. And now I think I'm ready to buy like my third lens. So I kind of like, gotten to the point where I still don't know everything. I just learned what the Kelvin setting is, but thanks to my friend Marika, she kind of went on a little not infomercial, I don't know why I want to say that, a little educational spiel about it. And so now I'm kind of testing out like those fun different settings.
Has somebody taught you the triangle yet? Exposure triangle?
Yes.
ISO, shutter speed?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I use it correctly because usually my f-stop doesn't change, and I'll change the other two, but I know that if you turn one up, you have to turn the other down at least. So
yeah.
I do more of a teeter-totter rather than a triangle.
Right. It always just depends on what you're looking for, but the way that the dials are laid out on the camera, it's more of a teeter-totter than a triangle anyway, so I totally respect that. Yeah, I mean, that's just one of the things that you'll get it when it just comes with time. It comes with time on the lens. Like you figure out that if you want like a shallow depth of field, then your f-stop needs to be lower, but you have to compensate with all the light that's coming in. Unless it's super dark, then you have to compensate the other way.
Yeah.
But it's smart what you're doing, because that's what our professors taught us in college. Like if you don't know, if you don't have time, or if you don't think that you can get to it just to change it, just keep it on an aperture priority the whole time, which is just your f-stop changes if it needs to. But other than that, it just stays the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Do you see yourself in the future like in a role of mentorship with other influencers or other people that kind of wanted to do the same thing that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I when I went to Arizona the other month, it was with one of my friends, and she's actually a photographer, and that's kind of how we connected. Was I hired her to do some shoots, and her and I were talking, and she offers mentorships for photography. Just, you can go on, book an hour conversation with her, and she's like, I really think you could be beneficial at that. And I started thinking, I'm like, the amount of people that like reach out to me with questions, and I mean, it's more than just like a black and white answer usually. There's so many factors that go into so many things when it comes to content creation and influencing, that I'm like, I think a mentorship would be an amazing thing to offer, and I think people would really like see a lot of value in that. So that's something else that I've been playing around with offering this year. Like I said, my 2 words of the year were growth and challenge. And I say 2 because I don't think you can grow like your skill set and everything without facing challenges. And I don't think you can challenge yourself without seeing some growth come from it. So I felt like those 2 went hand in hand. And so I'm really trying to lean into that and challenge myself to grow in these new ways.
Yeah, I've always said that I am uncomfortable when I start to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And if I'm not moving forward, then I'm just stuck in one place. And that's just a very, very weird feeling for me. It makes me feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Or I'm not keeping up in some way, because there's hundreds of other kids out there that would love to be able to do what I can do. And I take that really, with pride that I am chosen to be able to go out there and shoot these rodeo athletes and hopefully elevate the media that they haven't been used to. I mean, it's getting so much better these days. Like there are some very talented people out there shooting. My friend Click, Randy, like all these dudes that I've looked up to since I was first got here. But they were, I think, the cornerstones of people that were elevating media around rodeo. And I just feel so lucky to be a part of it now. And I want to do everything that I can to help elevate it the same way that those dudes did.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to have those people you can look up to and then kind of become that role, like be that role model for other people, because even if you don't feel qualified, you always have some bits of knowledge that you can share, or just, little pieces of, I don't know, along the way that you learn that other people, they might not think of it. And so if you can become like that model for someone else to learn from and like grow their skills, I always say other influencers, other content creators are my coworkers, are not my competition. Like I search for help from a handful of gals that I trust, that I know are, knocking it out of the park, and they do the same to me. And I like always welcome new people to come to me with questions too.
Yeah, I'm really into Reddit. It's a website. It's a big community website. I'm sure you know of it.
Yeah.
But especially the ones that have to deal with the cameras that I deal with, because I stick with the same camera system. So
Yeah.
the same cameras that I use for rock and roll denim, I use personally, and I think that kind of helps itself. Like you'll learn one thing doing something on your own, you'll learn one thing professionally, and you kind of blend them together. But I'm on these forums with all these creators that use the same exact rig that I do, like down to the same gimbal, the same lens setup, and everything. And I learned so much just from logging onto that maybe once a week about some trick that somebody found.
Yeah.
And it's something that like, I can't believe I didn't even think of that, but it changes everything.
Yeah.
And it just makes your job so much easier. And anything that you can do that it's just a little stone of knowledge that somebody picked up along the roads that makes what you do easier, I'll put that on my camera bag all day.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. So I don't want to keep you too long. We got some stuff that we got to do around here. And then we have a huge photo shoot to deal with tomorrow. But I like to ask the question at the very end. Shaley, you've grown a lot in the last 6 months and you've been able to do some incredible things. And we're super proud and it's just so great to watch you be able to grow like that. If there is somebody that's kind of doing the same thing that you are or wants to kind of do the same thing you do, what would be the biggest piece of advice you could give to them?
I could think of a couple different things, but the thing that's weighing on me right now that I want to share is to not think too much about it. Don't think you have to be like someone else or creating like someone else or working with brands like someone else is. Do less and just be true to yourself, and that's what's going to take you the furthest.
I couldn't said it any better myself. Well, thank you so much, Shaley. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. We're going to have a big fun photo shoot tomorrow, and I'm sure I'll see you in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me again.
You bet. No problem at all.